In this video, I am going to share with you some tips on how to greatly improve your listening skills, especially that it's very challenging to listen when your customer is speaking over the phone, or when the person you're speaking with is not or doesn't have the same culture as yours. Hi there, Ninja! Hello! My name is Rhea, and you're still watching Call Center Ninja, sharing with you real stories and tips to enjoy and survive your call center lifestyle. And he also says hello, but just in case you get scared, I'll just put him down. So, I guess if you're new here, please consider subscribing by clicking the red subscribe button on my YouTube channel below, or if you're watching this on Facebook, I'm also going to link my YouTube channel as well. But enough with all the introductions. As I've mentioned in this video, we're going to talk about different tips on how to improve your listening skills. Listening is definitely a skill that everybody has to master. And it's just as important as speaking, because how will you be able to start knowing what you're going to say to someone if you haven't even listened in the first place? And so I think that listening is very important, especially when you're working in a call center. You can ask anyone. That is probably one of the most important skills that you need to have when you're working in a call center. Especially that it's very challenging to speak with someone over the phone. Now, you might notice that a lot of people have difficulty listening to someone, even if you know you or they're just talking to that person face to face, or if that person is just beside them. So it makes it hard to listen to someone, especially with so much distractions. And how much more if you are speaking with someone over the phone, where there is a barrier, there could be a cultural barrier, there could be a communication barrier or language barrier. So safe to say that you need listening skills, genuine listening skills, to first, be able to build relationships with your customers. Second, be able to understand what the real concern is. And third, and very important, be able to resolve the customer's issue at the end of the call. So my tip number one is to always imagine a person you know that you are speaking with over the phone. Like, put a face into that person. That's what I usually do when I was still taking calls. Just like how I speak with you, and I try to imagine who I am speaking with, like a real person, instead of me speaking just in front of a camera. I try to think of how this person would look, because that way I will be able to effectively listen, because I know that there is someone over the phone and it's a human being that needs to be listened. So for example, I try to imagine that this person could be my father, my mother, grandmother, or grandfather, and those people, they need to be respected. So the moment you think of them as real people and as human beings, and not just your customers who mean business, then you will be able to genuinely listen to them. Tip number two is to genuinely pay attention, or to mentally screen distractions in your head. Try to compartmentalize the noise or the distractions in your head. Like, do not be distracted by the person's accent or the way he or she speaks. I know sometimes it gets kind of distracting, but really you just have to get used to it. And in your mind, you have to put that in a certain part of your brain that, okay, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm just going to listen to this person and to whatever the concern is really about. Another thing is, you might get distracted with your feelings, your thoughts in that during that day, your worries, and those can also distract you. So try to leave your emotional baggage at home. I know it's very difficult, but remember that you are working, and you're supposed to not bring your emotional baggage to work, because you would want to be professional. And when it's work, it's really work. And there is a time for you to think about your emotional baggage, your worries, and your thoughts. You have to learn how to control them, especially when you're working and there is another person on the line who also needs to be responded to. My third tip is to eliminate preconceived notions. Preconceived notions are judgments, and sometimes when you have taken calls for quite some time and you get used to the different concerns, scenarios, you sometimes tend to jump into conclusions which make you not listen anymore to what the customer is trying to say. So when you listen, do not listen with judgment. Listen without judgment. So leave your judgment first, and try to concentrate on what the customer is saying to you. For example, if you see that the customer's account has so many fees, or maybe the customer has a late payment, or the customer hasn't paid yet, and even when the customer hasn't told you yet what the concern is, in your head, you're already thinking, you're already judging the customer. Okay, so this customer has a late payment, this customer has so many fees. For sure, this customer is asking for fee refunds, and this call will turn out to be so bad. The customer will give me a failing survey because of all these fees, even though it's not my fault. So you see how that goes. The customer hasn't even told you yet what the concern is, but in your mind you already have so many judgments about the customer. So eliminate those judgments and those notions first, and start a clean slate in your head. Listen carefully first, and who knows, even if the customer does have fees on the account, his concern might be totally unrelated to that. So don't be ahead of yourself and the customer. It always helps to be open-minded. So, you don't want other people to judge you, right? So do the same to your customers over the phone. Tip number 4 is do not interrupt, or do not be a sentence grabber. Do you know someone who's a sentence grabber? Or maybe you're also guilty of that, because sometimes I'm also guilty of that. Like when you are speaking with your friend or a family member and they are talking to you, and because you don't want to hear their stories, you tend to finish their sentences, because in your head you already know what they're going to say. Like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I already know what you're going to say. So that's a no-no when you're speaking with your customer over the phone. You don't want that. You would want to wait for the customer to finish his or her statement or story before you actually think of a conclusion or a resolution to the problem. And you don't want to interrupt the customer in the middle of speaking, because that would just be plainly rude, and your customer might not like it, because, well, let's face it, it's really rude to interrupt someone when he or she's in the middle of saying something to you. And the bad thing about that is when you interrupt someone and you act as if you already know what he or she is saying, and in the end you actually don't know what he or she is saying, then it's just going to lead to more misunderstandings and more mistakes rather than issue resolution. So do not interrupt. But we have what we call interjection, or politely interject rather than interrupt, because sometimes, even if the customer has already stated the concern once and it's pretty clear to both of you, some customers have the tendency to go around in circles, and just repeating what he or she is saying all throughout the call, and it's costing you your handle time, and it's already unnecessary repetition. Then you can politely interject by paraphrasing, or by telling the customer, Mr. Smith, I understand you talked to me about this concern, and this is what we're going to do. So just politely interject, but don't rudely interrupt, especially, again, if the customer is already just going around in circles. Tip number 5 is to focus and listen to key points, keywords, or key phrases. Sometimes you are not interested to what the person is speaking, but since it is your job to help the customers over the phone, then you have to be interested and you really have to focus. So how will you do this, especially if the customer has a lot to say? You have to practice listening to keywords or key points, but it's not selective listening or whatnot, that you just want to, because selective listening is sort of like you just want to listen to whatever part you want to listen to. You're selecting the part that you want to listen to. But when you are listening for keywords or key points, since you weren't able to follow exactly what the customer has been saying for the longest time, then you can actually write down keywords. Well, of course, if you're taking calls, I doubt you're allowed to bring papers on the floor. So perhaps you're gonna use your notepad or WordPad or whatever note-taking app you have on your computer. So take note of the keywords or key points. That's what I usually do so that I don't forget. But also remember to focus on what the customer is saying. Just type in the key points, keywords. For example, you can think of locations, time, dollar amount or fees, and the causes. Those important points are important things that you can write down, and then from your key points or your keywords, you can start paraphrasing or asking the customer about them, just in case you need to clarify some things.